Welcome back to lesson number 4, discussing your rights and responsibilities as a borrower. So far, we've looked at the fact that it's your right to borrow money and what responsibilities you have when you do borrow money. We've looked at some things that you have to be cautious about, and I've had you create a code of conduct when you do borrow money. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about what using credit means. So when you use credit, when you use credit to buy a new t-shirt with your credit card, or you use credit to get a loan for a car, you are borrowing from the lender and your future self. Now, what does that mean? You're borrowing from the lender. That's kind of a given because they're the ones giving you money, but you're also borrowing from your future self. See, when you purchase on credit, you as the borrower, you have to plan ahead and you have to build that repayment into a spending plan. And that's money that won't be available for something else. So if you have to spend $200 a month to pay back a car loan, you can't spend that $200 on going out to movies or going bowling with friends. You've already lost it. You have to use it on repaying that loan. Right now I want you to turn to page 19 in your student booklet. Page 19. At the bottom is an article. It's titled Stealing from Your Future Self. I'd like for you to pause this video and read that page, or read that article, Stealing from Your Future Self. All right, now that you're finished reading page 19, you can kind of see and maybe understand a little bit more that every dollar that you borrow today, it's $1 less that you have to spend from in your next paycheck, because you do have to pay that back. Another section that I'd like for you to read is page 16 and 17. Page 16 and 17. We're going to read a little bit about Mariah's mom and the spending that she was using and how she had to handle some debt. So again, pause this video, turn to page 16 and 17, and read about the dark side of debt. All right, so after reading this story, Mariah's mom had a situation where she had too much money that she was borrowing. Her borrowing got out of control, and she took on more debt than she was able to pay off. So there are people who, they make unwise choices. But hopefully, as you're going through these lessons, you're realizing that you don't have to make the same unwise choices. We want to limit that from happening, and so that's why we've had you create the code of conduct, and that's why we're having you go through these lessons, so you can be better prepared for life in the future. And as a reminder, just taking on too much debt, it's going to increase the amount you have to pay in fees and interest, which is money that you won't have available for other needs and wants now or in the future. So again, just remember that when you borrow, you are borrowing from your future self, and you have to make plans to be able to borrow money now and in the future. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to borrow too much, but how much is too much? Well, it's really important to know your limits. So the creators of this study guide have created the 20-10 rule. It's a great guideline to help borrowers evaluate how much debt is too much. It's really important that you as the borrower determine and take the responsibility to figure out what's affordable based on your situation. Not your hoped-for situation. So if you hope to be making $100,000 a year, but you're really in reality only making $30,000, you need to take in how much money you're making into account. Okay, so let's get into what the 20-10 rule actually says. The 20-10 rule says that your debt, how much you have to pay back, should be less than 20% of your total annual net income. So if this circle was to represent how much money you're making, then only this little sliver is how much you should be paying in debt. Again, those are your loans and your credit cards. And there's a star, it's an asterisk. It says that this rule does not include mortgage-related debt. And mortgage is when you are buying a house. So this doesn't include the debt that you'll have if you also buy a house. But this is just your everyday run-of-the-mill kind of borrowing debt debt for loans, debt for credit cards. So that's the 20 part of the rule. The 10 part of the rule says that your monthly payments should be less than 10% of your monthly net income. Okay, so if this is how much money you're making in a month, then it really should only be about 10% is what you're paying towards debt. And that is actually something that can help your credit score. Utilizing 10% or less of the amount of money that you have available is something that credit score agencies look at to make sure that you are following. Now, that doesn't mean that if you use 11 or 12% in 1 month that your credit score is going to take a nosedive, but it does mean that you just need to maybe look at what you're spending and having to repay and maybe make a few changes to your budget. So let's take a look at calculating debt limits. So we're going to complete activity 2.7, know your limit. That is in your notebook. But I'm going to do some of this with you on the screen. All right, so we're going to look at Mariah's sister and Jesse's brother together, and then I'm going to have you do Jesse's sister and you on your own. So if we look at Mariah's sister, she makes about $6,500 a year. So, following the 2010 rule, we're going to take the annual net income, that's $6,500, and we're going to multiply that by 20%. Now remember, in order for a percent to become a decimal, you have to move the decimal place over 2 points. All right, so you would move it from the 0 over, and it's going to, oh, there we go, sorry. You're going to move it from the 0 over, and it's going to become 0.2. All right, that's why they have 0.2 there instead of 20%. And when you multiply those together, that's how you find a percent of. You're going to take your annual net income and multiply it by the 20%. You should get $1,300. So that's saying that Mariah's sister should take in no more than $1,300 worth of debt in 1 year. And when you make payments, how much can she afford to make per month? So if she makes $6,500 a year, we need to divide that by 12 to figure out how much or about how much she's making each month. Okay, when you take 6,500, divide it by 12, and then multiply it by 0.10, again, because we have to move that decimal place, you will get $54.17. That means that Mariah's sister should only be paying $54.17 in payments each month. That doesn't seem like a lot of money, but Mariah's sister also isn't making a lot of money each month. $6,500 does seem like a lot in a year, but when you think that the poverty line is around $22,000, $23,000, she's making way below that. So Mariah is probably still in high school and probably is still just trying to make money so that she has some spending money around. Jesse's brother and Jesse's sister, on the other hand, they're both making in the thousands over the poverty line. They're making an average salary. So again, to find that 20% that he can spend on his maximum, his total debt, you're going to move that decimal place over 2 points. Okay, so it's 0.2 or 0.20, and you're going to multiply that by $24,750. All right, you can write that answer down in your activity sheet, and I will show you the answers in just a few minutes. To find his maximum monthly payments, again, you're going to take the annual net income, that $24,750, divide it by 12, because we want to find out how much he earns each month, and then multiply that new number by multiply that new number by 0.10. All right, because we're taking 10%, move my decimal place over, 0.10. Okay, you can write that answer down as well in your activity sheet. I would also like you to do Jesse's sister. She makes $35,800 a year, so multiply that by 0.2 to find your maximum total debt, and then divide the annual net income by 12 and multiply that by 0.10 to figure out how much she can repay each month. Okay, you can write those down and I will show you the answers in a second. And for yourself, you might not make any money, or you might have some income that you have each year, but I want you to kind of choose a number. How much do you wish to make in a year? Now, the average person is probably going to make between $24,000 and $60,000. You could make a $100,000 salary for yourself, or even $1 million if you wanted. But I just want you to be aware that an actual salary that would be kind of normal would be between $24,000 and $60,000. All right, so go ahead and finish that activity, and I will go over the answers with you in just a moment. Hopefully you've had time to finish that activity. If not, just go ahead and pause this until you're done. I'm going to show you the answers in 3, 2, 1. All right, here are the answers. So you can check your work. If you look down here, this has an n in it. For you, it just says n, and then n times 0.20, and then n divided by 12 times 0.10. That's your net income. So whatever number you put in there, if you follow this pattern, you should get a relatively good answer. All right, looking at Jesse's brother and Jesse's sister, they can afford to make about $200 and $300 worth of payments each year. And they can take out a total maximum debt of $4,950 and $7,160. What I'd like you to do now that you've checked your work is, if your work is accurate, I would like for you to choose 3 additional salaries. 3 additional salaries that you could use to find the maximum total debt and the maximum monthly payments. And how I want you to find these salaries is, I'd like for you to research 3 jobs that you're interested in having. So if you want to become a doctor, or if you want to become a construction worker, or if you want to become a cosmetologist, I want you to look those annual salaries up online for your state that you're living in, and use those salaries to figure out how much total debt you could take out and the monthly payments. Once you're done with that, we'll conclude our lesson. I will check those for accuracy, or your proctor will check those for accuracy, and we'll get back with you in a later time. Thanks for watching, and have a good time.